Segun Adesanya, a wealthy farmer in Nigeria, lived a peaceful life with his lovely wife, Adenike, and their beautiful daughter, Abike. One evening, the family sat together on their porch, enjoying the cool breeze after a long day of work. "Papa, how was the farm today?" Abike asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. Segun smiled warmly at his daughter. "It was a good day, my dear. The crops are growing well, and the workers are doing a great job." Adenike nodded in agreement. "We are truly blessed. I made some fresh palm oil today. Would you like to taste it, Segun?" Segun's eyes lit up. "Of course, my dear. Your palm oil is the best in the village." Abike giggled. "Mama, can I help you with making palm oil tomorrow?" "Of course," Abike Adenike replied, gently patting her daughter's hand. "You are always such a great help." The family laughed and talked late into the evening, sharing stories and making plans for the future. Segun felt immense pride and happiness as he looked at his wife and daughter. They were the light of his life, and he would do anything to protect them. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Segun stood up and stretched. "It's time for bed, everyone. We have another busy day ahead of us tomorrow." Adenike and Abike agreed, and they all went inside their home grateful for the peaceful and happy life they shared. Titi was Adenike's friend. They had known each other since they were young girls. Titi often visited Adenike's home, and on the surface everything seemed fine. But deep inside, Titi's heart was filled with jealousy. One day, Titi came over for a visit. She watched how Segun helped Adenike with the household chores and how he always had a kind word for her. Titi saw how Segun played with Abike, lifting her up and making her laugh. The sight of their happy family life made Titi feel envious. "Segun, you are such a good husband," Titi said, forcing a smile. "Adenike is very lucky." "Thank you," Titi, Segun replied warmly. "I am the lucky one to have such a wonderful wife and daughter." Titi felt a pang in her heart. She wanted a life like Adenike's, but instead she had always struggled. She couldn't help but compare her life to Adenike's and feel bitter about it. Later, when Titi and Adenike were alone, Titi tried to hide her feelings. Adenike seemed so happy. "How do you do it?" Adenike smiled. "It's all about love and understanding, Titi. Segun and I work together as a team. And Abike brings us so much joy." Titi nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. "I wish I had a life like yours," she thought to herself. "Why does Adenike get to have everything?" As days turned into weeks, Titi's jealousy grew. Every time she visited, she saw more things to envy. Segun's loving gestures, Adenike's happy smile, and Abike's innocent laughter all seemed to mock her own lonely and difficult life. One evening, after another visit filled with bitterness, Titi sat alone in her small house. She couldn't stop thinking about Adenike's happiness. The more she thought about it, the more her jail zero Yuzi turned into anger. "Why should Adenike have all this happiness while I have nothing?" Titi whispered to herself. "I deserve to be happy too." Titi's heart grew darker as she let her jealousy consume her. She began to think of ways she could have what Adenike had. She started visiting more often, pretending to be a good friend while secretly harboring her envious thoughts. Adenike, unaware of Titi's true feelings, continued to welcome her friend warmly. She shared her joys and her struggles, not knowing that Titi was plotting behind her back. One day, as Titi watched Adenike and Segun together, a plan began to form in her mind. It was a dangerous and wicked plan, but Titi didn't care. She was determined to have the happiness she believed she deserved, no matter the cost. And so, with a jealous heart and a mind full of schemes, Titi set her plan into motion, ready to disrupt the peaceful life of the Adesanya family. Titi stood by the window of her small house, staring out at the vast fields that stretched towards the horizon. She thought about Adenike, her childhood friend who lived on a large, prosperous farm with her husband Segun. Titi envied Adenike's life. She wanted the comfort, the stability, and most of all she wanted Segun. A plan began to form in her mind. It was a Owa's plan, but Titi was determined to take Adenike's place. A few days later, Titi decided to visit Adenike at the farm. She wore a bright, friendly smile as she approached the house. Adenike welcomed her warmly, not suspecting anything. The two women sat on the porch, sipping cold drinks and chatting about old times. Adenike, your farm looks more beautiful every time I see it, Titi said, looking around. You must be very happy here with Segun. Yes, we are doing well, Adenike replied, smiling. Segun works very hard and the farm is thriving. Titi nodded, her mind racing with her plan. You're lucky to have such a wonderful husband, she said. He's very devoted to you. Adenike smiled again, this time a little shyly. Yes, Segun is a good man. As they continued to talk, Titi subtly steered the conversation towards her plan. She began to ask about Segun's routines, his habits, and the things he liked. Adenike, trusting her friend, answered all the questions without suspicion. Titi, you must come for dinner one night, Adenike said. Segun would love to see you. That sounds wonderful, Titi replied, hiding her excitement. I would love to come. The visit ended with warm goodbyes, but as Titi walked away from the farm, her mind was filled with her sinister plan. She knew that she had to act carefully and cleverly. She would need to gain Segun's trust and affection, and she would need to find a way to push Adenike out of the picture. Over the next few weeks, Titi visited the farm more frequently. She brought small gifts for Adenike and Segun, always making sure to be helpful and friendly. She offered to help Adenike with her chores, and soon she became a regular presence at the farm. Segun noticed Titi's frequent visits but didn't think much of it. He appreciated the extra help, and Titi's cheerful demeanor made the days seem brighter. He didn't see the calculating glint in her eyes as she watched him work. One evening, Titi stayed for dinner. She had made a special effort to look nice, wearing a dress that she knew Segun would like. As they sat down to eat, Titi complimented Segun on his hard work and dedication to the farm. Segun smiled, pleased with the praise. Titi, you're always so kind, Segun said. It's nice to have you here. Adenike, unaware of Titi's true intentions, was happy to have her friend around. She didn't notice the way Titi looked at Segun or the way she lingered a little too long when she touched his arm. After dinner, Titi offered to help Segun with some work in the barn. Adenike stayed in the house, thinking nothing of it. In the barn, Titi seized the opportunity to get closer to Segun. Segun, you work so hard, she said, her voice soft and sweet. You deserve someone who appreciates you. Segun looked at her, slightly puzzled. Adenike appreciates me, he said. We're happy together. Titi smiled, hiding her frustration. Of course you are, she said quickly. I just mean that you're a very special man, and not everyone sees that. Segun didn't reply, but he felt a strange unease. He brushed it off, thinking that Titi was just being friendly. Little did he know that she was planting the seeds of her devious plan. As Titi left the farm that night, she felt a surge of excitement. Her plan was starting to take shape. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to take Adenike's place and live the life she had always dreamed of. She just needed to be patient and wait for the right moment to strike. The morning sun was shining brightly as Titi walked to the farm. Birds were singing and the air was fresh. Titi greeted everyone she met with a cheerful good morning. She wanted people to think she was kind and friendly. No one suspected her true intentions. When Titi arrived at the farm, she saw Abike working hard. Abike was feeding the chickens and watering the plants. She looked up and saw Titi approaching. Abike smiled and waved. "Hello, Titi," Abike said. "What a nice surprise. What brings you here today?" Titi smiled back, hiding her true feelings. "Hello, Abike. I was just thinking about you and decided to come and help you with your work. I know the farm keeps you very busy." Abike was happy to have company. She appreciated Titi's offer and welcomed her warmly. "Thank you, Titi. I could use some help. Let's work together." The two friends worked side by side, talking and laughing. Abike showed Titi how to take care of the animals and plants. Titi seemed very interested and eager to learn. She asked many questions and followed Abike's instructions carefully. As the day went on, Abike began to feel tired. She suggested they take a break and have some lunch. They sat under a big tree and shared food, a simple meal. Titi saw this as her chance. "Titi, would you like something to drink?" Abike asked kindly. "Yes, please," Titi replied, "but let me get it for you. You have been working so hard. You deserve a rest." Abike smiled and nodded. "Thank you, Titi. That's very thoughtful of you." Titi went to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of juice. She took out a small vial from her pocket and carefully poured its contents into one of the glasses. It was poison, and Titi knew it would harm Abike. She stirred the drink to make sure the pure sun was mixed well. Abike's health continued to decline. Despite the doctor's best efforts, the pure sun had caused too much damage. Each day, Abike grew weaker and more frail. Her friends, Segun and Abike, visited her often, trying to lift her spirits and help her as much as they could. One evening, Abike was lying in bed, feeling very tired. She looked at Segun and Abike, who were sitting by her side, their faces filled with worry and sadness. "Thank you for being here," Abike said softly. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were filled with gratitude. Segun held her hand gently. "We are here for you, Abike. We will always be here for you." Abike nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We love you very much, Mummy." Abike smiled weakly. She knew her time was running out, but she felt comforted by the love and support of her family. "I love you both too," she whispered. "Please take care of each other and the farm." Segun and Abike promised to honor her wishes. They stayed by her side, holding her hands and talking to her until she fell asleep. Abike's breathing became slower and more shallow as the night went on. In the early hours of the morning, Abike took her last breath. She passed away peacefully, surrounded by her loved ones. Segun and Abike were heartbroken. They had lost a dear mother and wife, someone who had been a vital part of their lives. The news of Abike's passing spread quickly through the village. Everyone who knew her was shocked and saddened. Abike had been a kind and hard-working woman, loved by many. Her death left a void in the community. Segun and Abike organized a funeral to honor Abike's memory. People from all over the village came to pay their respects. They shared stories of Abike's kindness and hard work, remembering the good times they had shared with her. At the funeral, Segun stood up to speak. His voice was heavy with emotion. "Abike was more than a wife, she was my best friend. She showed us what it means to be strong and kind. We will miss her every day, but we will keep her spirit alive by taking care of each other and the farm she loved so much." Abike spoke next, her voice breaking with tears. "Adenike had a heart full of love and generosity. She always put others before herself. We are lucky to have had her in our lives. We promise to continue her work and keep her memory alive." The funeral was filled with tears and sorrow, but also with love and gratitude for the time they had spent with Adenike. People hugged each other, offering comfort and support. After the funeral, Segun and Abike returned to the farm. It felt empty without Adenike, but they knew they had to carry on. They worked together, remembering the lessons Adenike had taught them. They took care of the animals and the plants, keeping the farm running as a tribute to her. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The pain of losing Adenike never fully went away, but Segun and Abike found strength in each other and in their memories of her. They often talked about Adenike, sharing stories and laughing about the good times. Titi started visiting Segun often. She brought him delicious food and offered comfort. Segun enjoyed her company and looked forward to her visits. Titi was happy to see him smile and laugh. But Titi had a secret. She added a charm to the food she brought. This charm was meant to make Segun fall in love with her. Titi hoped the charm would work and that Segun would love her back. One day, Titi arrived at Segun's house with a basket of warm, tasty stew. "I made this just for you," she said with a smile. Segun thanked her and they sat down to eat together. The stew was delicious and Segun praised Titi's cooking. As the days went by, Titi continued to visit Segun. She always brought food and made sure to add the charm. Segun began to feel different. He found himself thinking about Titi more and more. He enjoyed her visits and missed her when she wasn't there. Titi noticed the change in Segun. He seemed happier and more affectionate. Her plan was working. Segun was starting to fall in love with her, just as she had hoped. One evening, Segun took Titi's hand and said, "Titi, I feel so happy when you're around. You've brought so much joy into my life." Titi's heart raced with excitement. "I feel the same way, Segun," she replied softly. The charm had worked its magic. Segun's feelings for Titi grew stronger every day. Titi was overjoyed, but she also felt a twinge of guilt. She wondered if Segun would have fallen in love with her without the charm. As their bond deepened, Titi continued to visit Segun, bringing him food and sharing happy moments. She cherished their growing relationship and hoped that their love would remain strong. Segun's feelings for Titi grew stronger every day. He couldn't imagine his life without her. One sunny afternoon, Segun decided to propose to Titi. He wanted to make her his wife and spend the rest of his life with her. Segun prepared a special dinner at his house. He cooked Titi's favorite meal and set the table with candles and flowers. When Titi arrived, she was surprised and touched by the effort Segun had put into the evening. As they finished eating, Segun stood up and took Titi's hand. "Titi," he said, looking into her eyes, "you have brought so much happiness into my life. I can't imagine my future without you. Will you marry me?" Titi's heart raced with joy. She had hoped this moment would come. "Yes, Segun, I will marry you," she replied with a big smile. Segun slipped a ring onto Titi's finger, and they embraced. Titi was thrilled, but deep down she knew that Segun's feelings were influenced by the charm she had used. Meanwhile, Abike, Segun's daughter, noticed the change in him. She saw how quickly Segun had fallen for Titi and felt something was not right. Abike was confused and upset. She cared deeply for Segun and couldn't understand why he was so enamored with Titi. One day, Abike confronted Segun. "Daddy, are you sure about this? Do you really know Titi well enough to marry her?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Segun, still under the charm's influence, dismissed Abike's worries. Abike, I love Titi and I know she loves me. She makes me happy and that's all that matters. Abike sighed, feeling helpless. She didn't want to see Segun make a mistake, but she couldn't convince him to see Titi's true nature. The charm had clouded his judgment, and he was blind to Titi's deceit. As Segun and Titi began planning their wedding, Abike watched from the sidelines, hoping that Segun would eventually see the truth. She wished for his happiness but feared that Titi's secret would one day come to light and break his heart. Will Segun discover the truth about Titi before it's too late? Stay tuned for the next episode of Marriage Proposal to find out. The day dawned bright and clear, the perfect backdrop for a wedding. Titi woke up early, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. She looked around her room, now filled with the trappings of a bride, her beautiful white dress hanging on the door, her veil draped over a chair, and flowers everywhere. Today was the day she had dreamed of for so long, the day she would marry Segun and start a new life. Titi's family home was buzzing with activity. Her mother was in charge of the preparations, making sure everything went smoothly. Her mother was proud of her daughter and wanted this day to be perfect. She oversaw every detail from the flowers to the food, ensuring that nothing was out of place. Titi's friends gathered around her, helping her get ready. Her wedding dress was a beautiful flowing gown adorned with lace and tiny pearls. As her friends helped her into the dress, Titi felt a mix of emotions. She was excited to marry Segun and start their life together. Meanwhile, at Segun's house, things were just as lively. Segun was surrounded by his friends and family, all congratulating him and offering advice. His father gave him a firm pat on the back and a few words of wisdom. "Always respect and love Titi," he said. "A good marriage is built on mutual respect and understanding." The wedding ceremony took place in a large, beautifully decorated hall. Flowers adorned every corner, and the sweet scent of roses filled the air. Guests arrived in their best clothes, excited to witness the union of Segun and Titi. As the music started, signaling the beginning of the ceremony, everyone took their seats, waiting for the bride to make her entrance. Segun stood at the altar, looking handsome in his suit. He couldn't stop smiling, thinking about how lucky he was to be marrying Titi. When the doors opened and Titi walked in, a hush fell over the room. She looked stunning, her face radiant with happiness. Segun's heart swelled with love as he watched her walk down the aisle. The ceremony was beautiful. The couple exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other forever. They exchanged rings, a symbol of their unending love. When the officiant finally pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted in applause. Segun and Titi shared their first kiss as a married couple, a sweet and tender moment that everyone would remember. After the ceremony, it was time for the reception. The hall was transformed into a festive space with a large dance floor, a band playing lively music, and tables laden with delicious food. Guests mingled, danced, and celebrated the newlyweds. Segun and Titi danced their first dance as a married couple, moving gracefully to a romantic song. As the night went on, Titi felt a new sense of power and control. She was now the mistress of Segun's household. She had always been strong and independent, but being married to Segun gave her a new confidence. She knew that together they could face anything, but Titi had plans. She wanted more than just a happy marriage, she wanted control. She started by making sure Segun's daughter, Abike, had limited access to her father. Abike was a sweet girl, but Titi saw her as a threat to her new position in the household. Titi began to subtly distance Ada from Segun, ensuring that she was always busy with school or activities when Segun was home. Slowly, Segun spent less and less time with his daughter, and Titi's influence grew. Next, Titi turned her attention to Adenike's property and clothes. Adenike had always had a taste for fine things, and Titi had long admired her wardrobe and belongings. Now, as the wife of the house, Titi felt it was her right to claim these items. She started by moving some of Adenike's clothes into her own wardrobe, making it clear that she was now in charge. Abike, surprised but not wanting to cause a scene, quietly accepted the change. Over time, Titi took more and more of Adenike's things. She moved into the master bedroom, redecorated the house to her taste, and made it clear that she was now the lady of the house. Abike, feeling powerless, watched as Titi took over everything she had once cherished. Titi's newfound power extended beyond the household. She began to involve herself in Segun's business affairs, offering advice and making decisions. Segun, initially pleased with Titi's interest, started to rely on her more and more. Titi's influence grew and she reveled in her new role. But power came with its own challenges. Titi had to navigate the complexities of her new life, balancing her ambition with the needs of her family. She had to manage Ada's feelings, maintain a good relationship with Segun, and keep Adenike from feeling completely displaced. It was a delicate dance, but Titi was determined to succeed. As the months passed, Titi became more confident and assertive. She took control of the household, making sure everything ran smoothly. She managed the finances, oversaw the staff, and made sure Segun's business thrived. Titi had always been strong, but now she felt truly powerful. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Titi and Segun sat together in their beautifully redecorated living room. Today was perfect, Titi said, resting her head on Segun's shoulder. I'm so happy we're finally married. Segun smiled and kissed her forehead. Me too, Titi. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. Titi looked around their new home, imagining all the happy times they would share. She felt powerful, knowing that she had a loving husband by her side and a bright future ahead of them. How do you think Abike feels about Titi's influence over Segun and her limited access to her father? Titi was harsh and cruel. She made Abike do all the chores in the house. Every morning, Abike woke up early to clean, cook, and wash. Titi never helped. Instead, she watched and criticized, "Do it faster." Titi would shout, "Why are you so slow?" Abike tried her best, but Titi was never satisfied. She treated Abike like a servant, giving her no rest. Abike felt sad and tired, but she had no choice. She had to do what Titi said. One day, Abike burned her hand while cooking. She showed Titi, hoping for some sympathy. "Why are you so Karel's dollar?" Titi snapped. "Finish cooking and stop complaining." Tears filled Abike's eyes, but she went back to work. She missed the days when her mother, Adenike, cared for her. Now, she didn't know how much more she could take. Segun, Abike's father, was deeply under Titi's charm. He saw only what Titi wanted him to see. In his eyes, Titi was the perfect stepmother, caring and kind. He didn't notice the harsh treatment Abike endured every day. When Segun came home from work, Titi greeted him with a warm smile and a gentle voice. "Dinner is ready, dear," she would say, leading him to the table. Abike, exhausted from her chores, would serve them quietly, hoping her father might see her pain. "Abike, you have such a wonderful stepmother," Segun would often say. "You should be grateful." Abike bit her tongue, forcing a smile. "Yes, Papa," she replied softly, hiding her hurt. One evening, after a particularly hard day, Abike mustered the courage to speak up. "Papa, Mommy Titi is not as kind as you think," she began cautiously. But Segun interrupted her. "Abike, don't speak. I love Titi. She has done nothing but care for us. You're just being ungrateful. Abike's heart sank. Her father was blind to Titi's cruelty. She realized that as long as Segun remained under Titi's spell, she would have to endure the maltreatment alone. Days turned into weeks and Abike's burden grew heavier. She continued to endure Titi's harsh treatment in silence, her spirit growing more weary each day. One afternoon, while scrubbing the floor, Abike heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find an old family friend, Mrs. Oladell, standing there. Mrs. Oladell had known Abike since she was a child and had always been kind to her. "Hello, Abike," Mrs. Oladell greeted warmly. "How have you been?" Abike forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mrs. Oladell. Please come in." As Mr. Oladell stepped inside, she immediately noticed Abike's tired eyes and the calluses on her hands. "You don't look fine, my dear," she said gently. "Tell me what's going on." Abike hesitated, but something in Mrs. Oladell's kind eyes made her feel safe. She poured out her heart, telling her about Titi's cruelty and her father's blindness to it. Mrs. Oladell listened carefully, her face growing stern. "This is not right, Abike," she said firmly.